Welcome to the Solid Signal Podcast for May 28th, 2013. There's a lot going on this week, and as I sat down to try to decide what I was going to talk about, I decided instead to talk about just about everything that I was thinking about. So it's a little bit different. Every week I try to shake the podcast up a little bit. First of all, this is the week of Memorial Day, and while it's a lot of people's first paid day off in a couple of months, there's a lot more to it than that, and I encourage you to think about that. In our country's over 200-year history, there have been a lot of people who sacrificed everything just so that we can have those basic freedoms like listening to podcasts and buying cool toys. They didn't think about whether it was a worthwhile sacrifice, they just did it. And whether you were a soldier or just somebody caught in the crossfire, if you inspired somebody, you're a hero. And I'd like to thank all those heroes. I'd like to think that somehow, in some strange way, they're listening. On a more grounded note, this is the week that we launch our Extreme Signal series of antennas. I've talked a lot about antennas and the technical aspects of them in the past, so if you're interested, listen to podcast number 5 or some of the other podcasts that talk about that stuff. The Extreme Signal line is designed to be super durable and super economical, get you the reception that you need in many cases, no matter whether you're 30 miles, 45 miles, even over 70 miles away. These are great antennas, and I encourage you to take a look at them. There are even some videos on our brand new updated YouTube channel, see how I did that segue there, that show you how to put together the antennas and give you an idea about what they're made of. I'd love to think of some clever way to tie YouTube into Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference. After all, they're two different companies that are putting them on, but this'll have to do. I'm looking forward to WWDC, as they call it, in about 2 weeks. And I'm hoping that Apple makes up for a lot of lost time with its next version of the Apple operating system, iOS. There was a time when Apple was the leader, in fact, the only smartphone company. Apple's got to play a completely different game if they want to stay on top of everything, ahead of the curve, and exciting, without losing some of that established customer base. June is also the month where we finally get to the first day of summer. In Michigan, we sure can't wait, I'll tell you that much. It has been cold. But it's also a great time to look back on the first 6 months of the year to see if I was right about my predictions. Back in our first ever podcast, I pointed out 2 trends that one made me a little bit concerned and one made me a little bit hopeful. So far, I've been way off on both of them. First of all, there was 4K televisions. They were everywhere at the Consumer Electronics Show, and hey, I haven't seen one since. Not at Best Buy, not anywhere. Maybe next year. Maybe later this year. Who knows? The other thing that I'm pleased to say is that I was worried back at the beginning of 2013 that we would see more fee fights than ever, and honestly, there hasn't been a major blackout on DirecTV or Dish at all this year. Let's see if we can keep that going. As a matter of fact, DirecTV is back to their old game of adding HD channels, and it looks like as we look to the second half of the year, they're going to keep on doing that, which is fabulous. So at least that's a case where I'm glad to be called dead wrong. Another one of my predictions from the beginning of this year was that wireless 802.11ac wasn't going to take off anytime soon. I guess I'm sort of sad that so far I'm right on that. 802.11ac adoption has probably been held back by the fact that the PC market itself has crashed terribly in the first 2 quarters, and people just aren't buying new machines. Low-power chips for smartphones and tablets aren't really there yet either. This is also a great week to get up on that roof, now that in many parts of the country the rains have stopped, and take a look at your antenna and satellite dish. Take a look and make sure everything is as tight as it needs to be, that nothing has gotten corroded, none of the antenna elements have gotten out of position. This is something that maybe you should be doing once or twice a year, just to make sure that everything is perfect. It's also a good time, of course, to take a look at your roof, make sure your equipment is properly grounded, and that everything else is all safe for you. So that about does it for this week's mixed bag edition of the Solid Signal Podcast. If you've got ideas for future podcasts, if you thought this one was way too boring and you've got to find a better thing to listen to, don't. Just push that Suggest a Topic button at the top right of the Solid Signal blog. And until then, have a great week.